Welcome to Real Grief, Real Healing with Mindy Corporan. I am your host, Mindy. A friend of mine told me in early 2018 that she saw a vision of me with a microphone in front of me. I laughed at the time and said, I don't see any microphones in my future. Less than a year later, I was recording my first podcast on this show. I'm not going to say, I hope you enjoy this podcast. My podcast is not truly meant to be enjoyed. Real grief, real healing is just that, real and raw. I provide you an opportunity to learn and share in the grief others are experiencing, and then we share how they are healing or perhaps not. Grief changes each of us in some way. Many of my guests have been encouraged to open new businesses, start foundations, and in general, work to make the world around us a better place. Grief is universal. How we decide to move onward, seeking healing, is individual. A significant part of my healing comes through the courageous kindness actions of others. As you listen to my podcasts, you will hear how you can give and receive courageous kindness too. Together, we are better.
Welcome to Real Grief, Real Healing with Mindy Corporan, taking a deep dive into the reality of the difficulty grief brings and offering insight into the healing available to each of us. Today, Episode 1, Shattered Soul. And now your host, Mindy Corporan.
Hi, I'm Mindy Corporan. Thanks for listening to me on my podcast. It's called Real Grief, Real Healing. And if you're listening to me now, I thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. I was asked to join this podcast by Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson and to join her channel, and I'm excited to do so. What we're hoping we achieve from this show, listening to my personal story, my personal journey and transitions, and then also I'm going to host guests, is that you will hear and be able to share in the grief of others. When we share our grief, it alleviates some of the pain. It won't get rid of the pain, I can tell you that, but it can alleviate it and it can help spread that pain out. Now you may be thinking, I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to experience pain. But you also may be sitting there thinking, now wait a second, I've had grief and no one's ever talked about it like this. And that's what my expectation is. I'm also going to definitely focus on joy and healing. How have I worked on healing? And I want to share all those experiences with you. So I hope you stay with me for the ride. On April 13th, 2014, my life changed. My life was shattered. My entire world at that moment came to an end. On April 12th, we were a family of 4. It was my husband, my older son, Reet, spelled R-E-A-T, and my younger son, Lucas, spelled L-U-K-A-S. Yes, every time we would book flights, we always had to do some extra spelling and thought put into travel documents. We were sitting in the kitchen with my mom and my dad, who I call Popeye and Yeye. That's what Reet named them. And we were having a family dinner. So on April 12th, just imagine a family dinner, just like you might have, or maybe like you would want to have, or maybe like you used to have. And we were discussing the day's events for the next day. The next day was Sunday. It was actually going to be Palm Sunday. My older son, Reet, was a performer. He was a singer, a dancer. He loved theater, musical theater, and he was very talented. Other people thought so too. I'm not just bragging. But of course, I am bragging because I'm his mom. So Reet had a performance, an audition scheduled for April 13th. And we had a little bit of a family dilemma. not a serious dilemma. Lucas, who was age 12, had a lacrosse game scheduled. And as you would expect, we had to divide and conquer. Reed's audition and Lucas's lacrosse game were supposed to start at about the exact same time. And they were about 25 minutes apart, driving distance. So at our dinner table, I made the statement that I would be taking Reed to his audition. And evidently, Lucas had a sad face. Reed noticed that his little brother had a sad face, and he said, "Mom, I really think you should take Lucas to the lacrosse game." And with a deep breath at that point, as just like I did now, I paused and I looked at Lucas and I said, "Okay, honey, I'll go to your lacrosse game, but is it okay if Dad drives you and I meet you there?" And he said, "Yes." So then I turned to my mom and I asked her if she could drive Reed to his audition. And she couldn't. She was going to be taking her other grandchildren, my niece and nephew, Andrew and Katie. She was going to drive them to Easter Bunny pictures. I'm a Christian. I was born and raised Christian. My family is of the Christian faith. And my mom, as a grandma, loves to do Easter Bunny pictures. So she had that already arranged. And it was at the exact same time as the audition and as the lacrosse game. So then we went to my dad, and he stepped up, as he always does. My dad has always been my hero. And he said, "Of course, I'd be happy to take Reed. Not a problem. Just give me the details." And so we did. We went on and gave him the details, and we finished our family dinner. Now it's April 13th. And the morning started out as a normal morning for us. Lucas was super excited about his lacrosse game and very happy that both of his parents were going to be attending. I went to wake Reed up and confirm, he had his suit and all of his items for the audition, and he did. He was very, very much ready for what he had going on that day, mostly because he had already tried out for 2 other activities, theater events earlier in the, I guess you'd say in the semester, in the spring. So Reed had already been accepted to a Starlight Stars program in Kansas City, where we lived, and he was looking forward to that. He was going to be one of 24 theatrical performers with Starlight Stars, and it's produced by Starlight Theater out of Kansas City. And then Reed had also tried out for an outdoor theater program, and it was going to be a summer showing of Tom Sawyer. And we had also received notification that he had been accepted and was going to be placed as one of the boys. He didn't make Tom Sawyer, but he was going to be one of the boys in the production. So this was his 3rd audition in about 3 months, and he was very prepared. As we stood in the kitchen, just discussing the day's events and what was going to happen going forward, I asked Reed to warm up for me and practice a little bit. And before he did, I gave Lucas a hug, gave Lynn a hug, quick goodbye, and they exited for the lacrosse game. I was anxious for Reed. I think every parent is anxious for their child when they get ready to perform, or, even for a math test or a chemistry test, something on stage, a baseball game, a basketball game, etc. I had the same flutters in my stomach for him that I know many of you have for your children or your grandchildren. So after Lynn and Lucas departed, I took a really good look at Reed. He was so handsome at the age of 14, and he was really coming into his own with his singing, his dancing, and his performing. He sang the section of On the Street Where You Live from the play My Fair Lady. And there were only so many bars and so much time that he had to sing. So he sang the bars that he was supposed to sing, and he messed up a little bit and he started over. I remember he sang it about 3 times for me. And he did a good job. And then he said, "Mom, I read in the material that they might let me sing another song, so I've been practicing another song, and I want to sing that one for you too." which I thought was a little unusual. Sometimes I would think at auditions, mostly they don't let you sing 2 songs or have the ability to do that. But the people that are auditioning, where he's going to go audition, they're all high school students, and they're all going to be nervous and anxious. So I thought it was really nice that that this group was allowing the students to come in, the talent to come in and have an opportunity to sing too. So Reet sang to me what most of us know as the Cup song. He sang to me, "You're going to miss me when I'm gone." And tears formed in my eyes, and just listening to his voice, I just knew he was going to do really well, feel proud of himself, and hopefully make the top 25 in this audition. My dad came in so excited to take Reet. He had his objective for the day. My dad's a swimmer. He had already gone to the gym and gotten his swim in. He walked in the house and walked straight out the back door. We were actually putting a pool in the backyard. We had been in our house for many years, and we had decided that it was time to put a pool in the backyard. So he came in, walked out the back door, and I remember seeing him stand feet apart, hands on hips, staring at the hole in the ground that was the pool. It was built, and we had just put a hose in it. And there was a tiny little puddle at the bottom of the pool. And I walked out beside him, and I said, "Don't jump in." We had a good laugh about that. We had built the pool so that he and I could swim laps in it. It was not the size of an Olympic pool, but it was a good size, and it was a rectangle, nothing fancy. But we were both excited to be able to swim together in that pool. And of course, we wanted the boys to be able to have fun and have friends over and parties, etc. So we had a lot that we were looking forward to that summer. Dad and I walked in the house, and I was finishing up some dishes, and he sat down at the counter and we chatted. Just like we always did. Talked about life, talked about the day, talked about his work, talked about my work. And then I heard Reet say, "Mom, you're going to be late for the lacrosse game." Oh, I took a deep breath and I said, "Okay." So I reminded my dad of where he needed to drive Reet, where he should park, where he should go in, and about what time they should be there. Reet's audition was at 1:30. I gave my dad a hug goodbye and I said, "Thank you." And then as I was walking around out of our kitchen and going to go out the back door, Reet was at the computer. And I leaned over and I kissed him on the cheek. And I said, "I love you. Good luck." And he said, "I love you too, Mom." Those were the last words I heard from my son. I drove to the lacrosse game. And I call it a God event. The lacrosse game was canceled. I walked into the parking lot and a mom was walking out of the stadium and she said, the game's been canceled. There's lightning in the area. And just like children on a playground, we looked up at the sky. We didn't see any lightning. We didn't see anything that gave us an indication that the game should be canceled. It was a cool, crisp day, but it was sunny and a bright blue spring sky. Then I saw Len, my husband, and Lucas come out. And Lucas had a sad face. I said, "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry that the lacrosse game was canceled. I'm going to go to Reet's audition." And I jumped in my car very quickly and headed back to the Jewish Community Center in Overland Park, Kansas, a 20-minute drive. And as I pulled around into what we call the J, they were celebrating their 100th year anniversary, and there were flags up. And I remember looking at the flags and thinking, wow, they've been in existence 100 years. You know, Reet's 14. We've probably been coming here about maybe 10 years since he was 4. He'd been in theater. He'd done baseball. He and Lucas had been in swimming. Lucas had been involved in a triathlon through the J. We'd been there so many times, and now he's auditioning for this competition. The competition was called KC Superstar. It's very similar to an American Idol type performance and program. And we had known for years, 5 years, that he was going to be performing. My business at the time, my company had been a financial sponsor, and we'd been supporters of it. We'd attended the year before. And now he was here, and now I'm pulling in the parking lot, and I'm about to go see him audition. I was excited that I got to go to the audition, and I was sad for Lucas that his lacrosse game had been canceled. As I pulled around the back of the parking lot, it was fairly empty, but I saw my dad's truck. It was a red truck. I'm not a car person. I couldn't even tell you what kind of truck it was, but it's the kind that has a decent sized cab. It has a front door and a back door for the driver and the passenger, and then you can be in the back seat. It has a short bed, and it was the color of Oklahoma Sooner red, because we were Oklahoma Sooners and always have been. And what I found interesting and odd is that the driver's side door was open, and on the driver's side, the back door was also open. But I didn't see anyone standing. I didn't see any people at all. I drove closer. It's not that I had stopped, but I had paused, and I pushed on the accelerator a little bit more. And within only a few seconds, I saw my dad's body. My dad was lying on his left shoulder on the concrete parallel to the truck. He wasn't moving. He wasn't making any attempt to move. My body started feeling this really crazy shaking, and I got cold, and I raced my car now with significant acceleration and stopped at the back of the parking lot just behind where his truck was parked and where I could see his body. I stopped the car. I jumped out with my keys, only my keys in my hand, leaving everything else in the car, and I ran to my dad. And I ran screaming, "What happened? What happened?" to no one. I still saw no one, and I heard no one. And as I got to be about 2 feet from my dad's body, it was apparent that he was deceased. It was apparent that what had happened to him, whatever it was, had killed him. And there was nothing I could do, but I wanted to touch him. I wanted to get close to him. I wanted to help him, but I was stopped. And I heard the words, "Your father's in heaven. Go find Reet." I didn't understand where they came from. I looked around. I didn't hear anyone else. I didn't see anyone. I didn't know from where those words had come, but they were very powerful in my head. I walked around the truck to the right of me, and I found Reet in the arms of 2 men whom I did not know. And I was still screaming, "What happened?" And they looked at me with surprise, and they said, "Who are you?" And I said, "That's my father, and he's in heaven," pointing past the truck and to the left where I knew my dad's body was lying. Blood was pooling around him. And I looked at Reet and I said, "And this is my son. Is he living?" And at that moment, another person grabbed me from behind, a rather large man. And he said, he kind of squished me down, and he said, "There's a shooter in the area. We have to take cover." So he half picked me up, half walked me away from where Reet was, but I could still see them, and walked me close to the Jewish Community Center building. And as we walked, I could see glass was everywhere. The window of the truck had been shattered. There was glass all over where Reet had been lying in the grass. There was glass in front of the building, and all of the doors to the building were broken and shattered. The glass was shattered like I felt at that time. I was shaking so profoundly that when this gentleman, his name is Mickey Blount, when he asked me if there was someone I could call, I couldn't even hold the phone in my hands. It was popping out of my hands like popcorn. I didn't actually have my phone. My phone was in my dad's truck with Reet. And so he handed me his phone, and the only number I could remember was Lynn's number, but I couldn't dial it. My hands wouldn't work. They were shaking. And so Mickey took the phone from me, and he dialed the number, and I called my husband. And I said, "Are you driving?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Where are you?" And he explained to me where he was on the way home. And I said, "There's been a shooting at the J, and my dad is dead. And Reet is injured, and I don't know how much he's injured. I don't know to what extent." And as I was talking to Lynn, they were wrapping Reet's head with some white shirt that they had or found. And I could tell that he was still unconscious. And Lynn paused and said, "I don't understand." And I said, "I don't understand either. But I need you to come back. You have to come. You have to turn around and come back here." He had already passed where we were. So he had Lucas in the car, and they turned around and headed back. Someone came and got me as I was watching them care for Reet. It started to rain, and this woman came and said, "We're very concerned about the shooter being in the area, and we really want you to come inside." And I said, "I'll come inside if you come and get me when the ambulance comes for him." And she said they would. And I walked inside. That was the last time that I saw Reet. Because after I went inside, at some point after that, the police arrived. And when the police arrived, everything changed. They didn't let me know that the ambulance had arrived. There was complete chaos going on in the facility. I ended up being inside a theater. I had to go to the restroom. I thought I was going to vomit. And I had someone take me to the restroom, and I didn't vomit, but I felt like it. And within about 10 minutes, I was at the back of the theater again, where Reet was supposed to be trying out, where I was supposed to be watching him try out. And my mom came bursting through the door. Lynn had called my mom, and she had come too. And she said, "Was that your father?" And I said, "Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom." I had had my wits about me enough while I was still standing outside. Before they had me go inside, I said to the same woman, I said, "Please cover him up. Please cover my dad. Do you have something to cover my dad with? I don't want my family to see him like that." And so they had covered him up, but I didn't know until my mom said, "I saw his shoe under the tarp. I saw that was his shoe and that was his sock." She said, "Do you know what happened?" And I said, I don't understand." I said, "They were shot, and I don't understand why they were shot." It took some time. It seemed like forever for Lynn and Lucas to get there. And in the meantime, my brother got there, my younger brother who lived in town. Tony is my younger brother. And he came running in and was angry. And then Lynn and Lucas got there, and there were lots of hugs, and we hugged one another, and we're still all at the J with a lot of confusion. And finally, we find out where they've taken Reet in the ambulance. And somehow Lynn drove us to the hospital. So in the car was Lynn driving, and then my mom and me and my brother and my 12-year-old Lucas in the back. And at this point in time, it was pouring rain, lightning, thunder, pouring rain, torrential rains had come, and somehow he drove us to the emergency room. I got out of the car and ran in, and I found a person in the emergency room, and I said, "I'm the mother of a boy who was brought in, and I think he was shot in the head, but I'm not sure. And we just need to know where he is and how he is." And then someone came out and ushered us into a small room, and by then, my brother and now his wife had joined him. And my mom and Lucas and Lynn, we all were ushered into this small room. And that's a room you don't ever want to have to go into. And pretty shortly after, a surgeon came in. I remember what he looked like. He had on a blue pants and a white jacket, and he had on tennis shoes, and he had long white hair, not horribly long, but he had a ponytail. And I found that very interesting that the man coming in to talk to us from the emergency room had a white ponytail. My dad was an emergency room doctor at the time, and they looked nothing alike, but this man was coming in to tell us that Reed had not survived. And he said to all of us, he didn't know who to speak to in particular, but which was fine. He needed to tell all of us. And he said, the young man who was brought in the ambulance did not survive. We lost his heartbeat in the ambulance, and we tried to revive him, and we couldn't. The damage was too great. And this is how my world shattered. And what I aim to talk about on this podcast is not only about our family and the ripples of negativity that happened to us, but what we have done to make ripples of kindness and to reach out to other people, to reach out even to reformed white supremacists. Because it was a white supremacist who killed my white father, my white son, and another woman who is also white, and all three of them are Christian. But they were killed out of hate. They were killed because someone was ignorant enough to think that he had the right to kill them. He didn't have the right to kill anyone. Our family has made so many transitions in our life and had so many changes, but we've also had healing. And I've learned to find joy. I want to talk about real grief and real healing. And I hope you stick with me while I do that. Friends, thanks so much for joining me today for this podcast of Real Grief, Real Healing with Mindy Corporon. If you want to dive deeper into how you might heal yourself or a friend, please pick up a copy of my book, Healing a Shattered Soul. Published on May 3rd, 2021, you can find my memoir anywhere books are sold. You will also find me in social media channels as Mindy Corporon. Take time to help yourself heal, accepting courageous kindness. Take time to heal another by giving courageous kindness. Together, we are better.
Real Grief, Real Healing is copyright 2021 to 2022, Mindy Corporon, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. This podcast is a production of 818 Studios.